Okay, so I want to talk about the Salvador prison camp situation again because this is really important. I actually didn't want to make a video today, but I think this is too important to be silent on, right? So the recent developments, as you probably heard also, is that a man named Garcia was deported to El Salvador, and he actually was that there was a court order to send him back to the United States because he was mistakenly deported to El Salvador, to this max prison, right? And Trump just said, no, we don't care about that, basically, right? We don't care about the court order. We don't care about the rules. Doesn't matter whether or not he's innocent. That's basically what's going on here, right? So, rule of law just doesn't matter, right? Because they want to get the man. So it doesn't matter whether or not the man is innocent. Due process doesn't matter. You know, it's all that matters is he's a man. Lock him up. That's it. And yes, this is a male issue because 100% of the people sent to these prison camps in El Salvador are men. Okay? So it is a male issue. All right? And also, Trump said basically to the president of El Salvador, he basically said, look, we may also send U.S. citizens there. Right? So he said like homegrown criminals, and that the president of El Salvador should build more prisons, like 5 more prisons or something. So this is basically fascism on steroids. Okay, even if they're criminals, you cannot just send them to another country without due process, and basically in this labor camp, in this slave labor camp, right, which is known for human rights abuses. This is sick. This is sickening. And also, like, I'm gonna do a very dark prediction, actually, right? Because I think this is probably gonna happen more in the future, right? Where they will just... There's an underclass being created of low status men, right? So low status men, the amount of low status men in the future is going to increase due to feminism and discrimination against men. And just this horrible system just makes men sick. So more and more men drop out the workforce, okay, because their economic prospects are just shit, and feminism kicks men out of the education system, as I've proven in previous videos. So the underclass of men is just going to increase, and they're seen by the system as surplus men, right? And what is this system going to do with these men? They're going to send them off to some prison labor camp, right? Or send them off to war, to be drafted in war, right? So let's just watch this from Breaking Points.
More of those facilities to house the U.S. citizens that Trump now wants to send to that notorious CCOT facility. Let's take a listen to how that went down.
Homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said, homegrowns are next. The homegrowns built. You got to build about 5 more places.
Yeah, we've got space.
All right. It's not big enough.
No, yeah.
Come on.
And it wasn't only in this hot mic moment. Apparently the El Salvador press was there, but the whole pool wasn't.
So he basically admitted this there, right? And there's also another clip.
We're keeping criminals out of our country. Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over and then...
I mean, he's referring to Garcia, who isn't even a criminal, right? He actually had an asylum He's a legal asylum seeker, right? So he's not a criminal.
That's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please go ahead.
I promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
it
Court's
to get
asking
it back?
to.
And
that-
what was the ruling
that your
in the
position?
Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling,
That is a lie.
saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
He's not a terrorist though. Again, they're just making shit up. They're just lying. This is sickening.
So you can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country.
So you can.
So if he says criminals, he means men, because we have already established that these prisons don't take women. Okay, so this is 100% a crackdown on men. Okay. And again, criminals could also just mean people who are not to Trump's liking, basically, right? So this is basically a war on low status men, or a war on men in general, right? Okay. And again, if this happens in the United States, this can happen to every place, right? Everywhere this can happen. I mean, look at this, right? Thousands of new prison places to be built to keep streets safe in the UK, okay? I've seen similar reports worldwide. They're building new prisons everywhere, right? And this is simultaneously in the UK where they abolish female prisons, right? So this is only... These new prisons are only for men. Okay? So male quote-unquote criminals, yes, some of them might be criminals, but other men violate the non-staring law and bullshit like that, right? So, or just for some quote-unquote misogynist comment on an incel forum or something like that, right? So, again, this is a global crackdown on low status men. Okay, this is sickening. This is sickening. And I mean, look at this prison, right, in El Salvador. It's called CCOT. Miguel Sarre, a former member of the United Nations Subcommittee for the Prevention of Torture, described CCOT as a concrete and steel pit used to, quote, dispose of people without formally applying the death penalty, end quote, citing that the government does not intend to release the prison's inmates. This is sick. So basically, if you're arriving there, it's basically like a death sentence then. So not only is this a torture place, but something worse, man. So, yeah, absolutely horrendous. And I cannot stay silent on this, Ryan. Nobody should be silent on this. This is the human rights abuse of the century, pretty much, right? Or one of the biggest ones in recent history. And simultaneously, I want to draw parallels to that right? Simultaneously, they're asking or they're calling for men to be sent to war, right? So-called surplus men, basically incels, right? These feminists, like this woman here, right? I'm not gonna play this video because there's like music and I don't want to have this copyright strike or something. But there was an article in the Telegraph where this feminist journalist basically said, you know what, due to the quote unquote crisis of masculinity, we have to send these incel men to war. This is what she basically suggested, right? And there's like Keir Starmer, he wants to also make warfare more attractive and the conscription more attractive to younger men, basically, right? So, and while this is going on, there's this adolescence bullshit propaganda, right, which indoctrinates people and fearmongers about young boys and young men, right? To the point where even like the police is taking the shit seriously or something, right? Parents across London need to be aware of the signs of their child could be vulnerable to radicalization or being drawn into violent extremism, Met Police say. The force said it was issuing advice after Netflix drama Adolescence sparked a debate about misogyny and incel ideology online. Deputy Sub Jane Corrigan, the Met's prevent coordinator for London, said while it's a fictitious drama, the story is grounded in a reality that we are seeing more and more in our work within counter-terrorism policing. So they're treating young boys as like terrorists, even though young boys and men in general are actually more the victims of violence, right? And the largest study known on the incel topic revealed that incels are not violent and are not actually a threat. So this is all just a boogeyman, right? The manosphere, Andrew Tate, and incels are a boogeyman to crack down on low status men and basically send them off to war or send them to prison and further police them. Okay? And this is going to escalate. This is going to escalate. We see it from both the feminists and we see it from demagogues like Trump, right? So again, my prediction about the future is that there's a growing number, or the number of low status men is going to increase, again, due to dropping out of, or being pushed out of the labor force, I should say, right? Being pushed out of the labor force due to feminism, due to discrimination, okay? And also due to rising fatherlessness, right? There's just going to be a increase of surplus males. And these surplus males, they're basically going to be either sent off to war or to some prison, right? And they're just going to use every pretext in a book, okay? I think this is the future. This is the Gulag future of men, or the Gulag and the Meatgrinder future of men. I hope I'm wrong on this, right? But this is probably what the future holds. Okay? Unfortunately. I mean, look, if Trump can just send random men to some Gulag, right? And if there's like an increase of calls for war and for the male draft and all of that, then I don't think I'm that far off, to be honest. Right? And again, you have to understand that if men are seen as useless in society, because of unemployment. If men are not valued for their innate humanity, right? But what they provide is valued usually, right? But if they're like unemployed through automation, for example, which is going to affect men more because automation affects more the manufacturing jobs and stuff like that, right? And also unemployment due to, again, women quotas, women only scholarships and stuff like that, then yeah, there's going to be more and more unemployed men or unemployable men, right? There's also unemployment due to a lot of men just being sick and having bad health due to their health care being underfunded and things like that, right? And just having very stressful lives. So again, there's going to be more and more low status men, and they are seen as subhuman by the system and by the elites. And the elites then can say, look, these men are dangerous, right? These men are incels. Send them off to some prison or even to some foreign prison, right? To some, like in El Salvador. So, or send them off to war. I hope I'm wrong on this, but this might be the future for a lot of low status men, unfortunately. So I really had to make this video, Ryan. And I'm gonna make more videos on the El Salvador topic, because this is just ridiculous. We're living through history, okay? And I cannot be silent on this.